unmute yourself and say hello? Vante, thank you. I see that you're there.
Yeah.
And Jared, are you there?
I'm in Clayton's room.
You're in Clayton's room. Okay, good.
Hi, Miss Better. I'm with Presley.
Okay, Presley. Okay, Brandon. Okay. All right, that's good. At our meeting on Tuesday, we took a poll, and every single student said that they would prefer to meet online this way rather than in the classroom. So that is, unless you have some objection, like if you want to get back in the classroom, that's completely fine and good with me. But every single person that I polled in both halves of the class said that they would prefer to meet online rather than in the classroom. Is there anyone here who disagrees with that or who wants a different situation?
I'll be good with that.
You're cool with that? Okay. Well, I just want to let you know that the time that we had reserved for our classroom meeting, you know, I can now open that time up for individual meetings. So if you need help with a paper when you get your assignments, we can use that time, you know, as a, I mean, you're free because you have a class scheduled, my class at that time. So you can kind of consider that like an office hour. You can make an appointment with me and I can meet you in the classroom or I can meet you online, whatever way that you prefer. So unless someone who was not at the meeting has some really big objection, then we'll continue to meet weekly at this meeting. And of course, I'll be posting video lectures and other materials online all the time. So before we get started, does anybody else have a comment or question? Okay, today what we're going to do is look at the readings of Christopher Columbus. You had the readings only posted a couple of days ago, so if you haven't read it, that's fine. Don't sweat. You're not going to get in trouble. But we're just going to go over the readings today just to help you because these readings will be very important in the first major paper that you do. So I just wanted to go through and point out some things. First, let's look at this online introduction. You know, he set sail in 1492. Here we are 600 years later, or a little over 500 years later. But he set sail to find an all-water route to Asia. And then in October, a couple of months later, he landed in the Bahamas at a place that he called San Salvador. The natives called it Guanahani. Isn't it strange, you know, that he could just sail and then he could give two new names to places himself without any regard or respect to what the natives were calling the place. Do you find that a little bit arrogant? I do. I find it arrogant because it's not respecting the culture of the people who live there. But you know that this was a common thing. You know, the people in Japan, they don't call it Japan. You know, in Japan, they call it Nihon. You know, in Japanese language is Nihongo. You know, but around the world, it's known as Japan, you know, because it was named that, you know, by outsiders. Anyway, that's our first clue, you know, that the natives are not being respected. He explored the Caribbean for 5 months. How many of you have been to the Caribbean?
No.
Who has? I never have been there yet. I envy you if you've been able to go there on vacation. But I'd like to go there someday. But he was there, and he left 39 men there to build a settlement. And then look at this. He also kidnapped several Native Americans between 10 and 25 to take back to Spain. Only 8 of them survived. So he just literally kidnapped them to take them back to Spain to kind of show them off as zoo animals or something. You know, he didn't really consider that they were individuals with individual rights, you know, to live their own lives. He also brought back gold and birds and plants. When he arrived back in Spain in 1493, the very next year, he immediately wrote a letter announcing his discoveries, and that's the letter that we're going to look at this morning. And then the letter was written in Spanish and then sent to Rome, where it was printed in Latin. And, you know, the printer accidentally left out Queen Isabella's name. And so he reprinted the pamphlet a few days later. And that's the one that you'll see in just a minute. And in this, he said, I discovered many islands inhabited by numerous people. I took possession of all of them. In other words, I mean, you know, he goes to the islands and he takes possession of the people there for King Ferdinand. And he also planted the flag there. So it was no longer, you know, the island of those people, but it was, you know, the island of the Spaniards. I mean, he just had the gall, you know, to do that. I took possession of all of them. Remember, we're going to have a holiday next month to celebrate Christopher Columbus. No one has really, you know, considered, you know, what he really did until they read the letters. And then they're really shocked to find out, you know, what kind of person Christopher Columbus really was. Here he said, noting they are destitute of arms. He says they are timid and full of terror. They are guileless and honest. So guileless means, you know, that they are not able to perceive when they're being abused. You know, they're innocent. Guileless means innocent. They're not tricky. Columbus declares that the land could be easily conquered by Spain. And then here's his excuse. It's all right for us to conquer them and make them our slaves because we'll make Christians out of them. So you have to remember that Christianity was not the native people's religion. You know, Christianity was the religion of the people who were coming from Europe. And so not only were they conquering people and making slaves of them, but they were also forcing their religion on people who had never heard of that religion before. How would you like it if someone just stepped on our continent and said, you will now practice this religion? All right, here's a copy of the original. Well, the letter was originally written in Spanish, but this is a Latin version. A Latin version would have been able to be read in all of the churches in the countries of Spain, France, Portugal. So Latin, you know, was the important intellectual language that everybody used back then, before Latin became a dead language and not used so much. All right, so here's the copy of the letter, and it's a short letter, so we have time in this meeting today to go over it. This is really going to help you when you write your first major paper. Your assignments coming up is, your first assignment is going to be easy and short, and it's just going to be your response paper to the readings about the Native Americans, you know, that we've just finished. And then your first major paper, which I will be posting very soon, will be about the interaction. It'll be some specific question about the interaction between the European explorers and the natives. So this will really be helpful in writing your paper. So let's go over it step by step. This is Christopher Columbus writing. This is the English translation of the Spanish. On the 33rd day after leaving Cadiz, I came into the Indian Sea, where I discovered many islands inhabited by numerous people. I took possession of all of them. So there's the first thing, a clue to his behavior. For our most fortunate king, by making public proclamation and unfurling his standard, no one making any resistance. To the first of them, I have given the name of the blessed Savior, whose aid I have reached this and all the rest. So that would be San Salvador, which translates to our to the Savior. But the Indians call it Guanahani. Now he thought he was in India, so that's why they are called Indians. But he wasn't in India. He was a whole, continent and ocean away from India. To each of the others, I also gave a new name, ordering one to be called Santa Maria de Concepcion, another Fernandina, another Isabella, another Juana, and so with all the rest. So you see, he's kind of sucking up to the Spanish royalty by giving all the islands names after members of the family. As soon as we reached the island, which I've just said was called Juana, I sailed along its coast some considerable distance towards the west and found it to be so large without any apparent end that I believed it was not an island, but a continent, a province of Cathay. So Cathay is in India, he was just confused about where he was. But I saw neither towns nor cities lying on the seaboard, only some villages and country forms, with whose inhabitants I could not get speech, because they fled as soon as they saw us. I continued on, supposing I should come upon some city or country houses. At last, finding that no discoveries rewarded our further progress, and that this course was leading us toward the north, which I was desirous of avoiding, as it was now winter in these regions, and it had always been my intention to proceed southwards, and the winds also were favorable to such desires, I included not to attempt any other adventures. Okay. Monte, I'll just mute you so that we won't hear your background. That's okay. Anyway, I didn't hear the last thing that you said, but no worries. I concluded not to attempt any other adventures. Well, he was probably afraid to. And so turning back, I came again to a certain harbor, which I had remarked. From there, I sent 2 of our men into the country to learn whether there were any king or cities in that land. They journeyed for 3 days and found innumerable people and habitations, dwellings where people lived, but small and having no fixed government, on which account they returned. Meanwhile, I learned from some Indians, now look at this, whom I had seized at this place. He had seized them. He had kidnapped them. He had captured them. He wasn't friendly with them to strike up conversation and get information. He took them by force. He and his men took them by force, that this country was really an island. Some Indians whom I had seized. So your paper is probably going to ask you to point out, things that Columbus did that were that today would be, cause outrage. But it didn't cause outrage 500 years ago, because the Europeans had a different worldview. They didn't really look at the Native Americans as people, as human beings. They were looked at more like animals or zoo animals. Consequently, I continued along toward the east as much as 322 miles, always hugging the shore. Where was the very extremity of the island. From there, I saw another island to the Edwards, distant 54 miles from this one, which I named Hispana, which means Spain, and proceeded to it and directed my course for 564 miles east by north, as it were, just as I had done at Juana. This island called Juana, as well as the others in its neighborhood, is exceedingly fertile. It has numerous harbors on all sides, very safe and wide, above comparison with any I have ever seen. Through it flow many broad and health-giving rivers. So he's really selling, this place, about all the wonders of this new place, because he wants to get financing to take another journey, back to America to explore it. And there are in it numerous very lofty mountains. All these islands are very beautiful and of quite different shapes, easy to be traversed, and full of the greatest variety of trees reaching to the stars. I think these never lose their leaves. So he must have been talking about evergreen trees. And I saw them looking as green and lovely as they are wont to be in the month of May in Spain. Some of them were in leaf and some in fruit, each flourishing in the condition its nature required. The nightingale was singing, and various other little birds, when I was rambling among them in the month of November. There are also in the island called Juana 7 or 8 kinds of palms, which is readily surpass ours in height and beauty, as do all the other trees, herbs, and fruits. There are also wonderful pine woods, fields, and extensive meadows, birds of various kinds, and honey, and all the different metals except iron. In this island, which I've said before was called Hispana, there are very lofty and beautiful mountains, great farms, groves and fields, most fertile both for cultivation and for pasturage, and well adapted for constructing buildings. So he's surveying this land, as a future settlement. The convenience of the harbors in this island and the excellence of the rivers in volume and salubrity means health, surpass human belief, unless one should see them. In it, the trees, pasture-lands, and fruits differ much from those of Juana. Besides, this Hispana abounds in various kind of species, golds, and metals. So in this letter, he's really trying to plant, the idea in the Spanish royalties' heads that they could get a lot of gold by coming here. The inhabitants of both sexes of this and all the other islands I have seen, or of which I have any knowledge, always go naked as they come into the world, except some of the women cover their private parts with leaves or branches or a veil of cotton, which they prepare themselves for this purpose. They are all, as I said before, unprovided with any sort of iron. It means they don't have weapons. And they are destitute of arms, weapons, which are entirely unknown to them. The underlying message is, oh, how easy it will be to conquer, to just roll over these people and take their land away from them, and for which they are not adapted. Not on account of any bodily deformity, for they are well made. Well, they had the exact human form, that the Europeans did. but because they are timid and full of terror. Well, of course they are. Their land is being invaded. Yeah. They carry, however, canes dried in the sun in place of weapons, upon whose roots they fix a wooded shaft, dried and sharpened to a point. But they never dare to make use of these, for it has often happened when I have sent 2 or 3 of my men to some of their villages to speak with inhabitants, that a crowd of Indians has sallied forth. But when they saw our men approaching, they speedily took flight, parents abandoning children. I mean, the parents are so scared that they they run off and leave their children, and the children run off and leave their parents. This happened not because of any loss or injury that had been inflicted upon them. So he's saying, no, Scout's Honor, we didn't hurt them in any way. They're just afraid of us. On the contrary, I'm such a good person. I gave whatever I had, cloth and many other things, to whomsoever I approached, or with whom I could get speech. You know, that's funny, with whom I could get speech. They don't speak the same language. You can't learn to communicate in a day or two, you know, with a whole new culture. You know, it takes years to have true communication, you know. But he's saying here, I gave them all these things without any return being made to me. What a good boy I am. But they are by nature fearful and timid. But when they see that they are safe and all fear is banished, they are very guileless and honest, and very liberal of all they have. No one refuses the asker anything that he possesses. On the contrary, they themselves invite us to ask for it. So just in case you think we're going in and ravaging them, you know, we're asking them to ask us, they themselves invite us to ask. They manifest the greatest affection. So the word manifest, that means to show. They manifest the greatest affection towards all of us, exchanging valuable things for trifles, content with the very least thing or nothing at all. But I forbade giving them a trifling thing. You know, I'm such a good commander. I didn't let my sailors take advantage of these people. I'm a good person, you know, such as bits of plates, dishes, or glass, also nails and straps. Although it seemed to them, if they could get such, that they had acquired the most beautiful jewels in the world. For it chanced that a sailor received for a single strap as much weight of gold as 3 solid solidi. So let's see, that's probably 3 golden coins. And so others for other things of less price, especially for new blancas and for some gold coins, for which they gave whatever the seller asked. For instance, 1.5 ounces or 2 ounces of gold, or 30 or 40 pounds of cotton, with which they were already familiar. So too for pieces of hoops, jugs, jars, and pots. They bartered cotton and gold-like beast. This I forbade because it was plainly unjust. I'm such a good person, I would not take advantage of people. And I gave them many beautiful and pleasing things, which I had brought with me, for no return whatever, in order to win their affection, that they might become Christians and inclined to love our king and queen and princes and all the people of Spain, and that they might be eager to search for and gather and give to us what they abound in and what we greatly need. They do not practice idolatry. On the contrary, They believe that all strength, all power, in short, all blessings are from heaven. And I have come down from heaven with these ships and sailors. And in this spirit, I was received everywhere after they had gotten over their fear. They are neither lazy or awkward, but on the contrary, are of an excellent and acute understanding. Remember, they couldn't speak the same language. Those who have sailed these seas give excellent accounts of everything, but they have never seen men wearing clothes or ships like ours. As soon as I had come into the sea, I took by force some Indians from the first island in order that they might learn from us. All right, did you hear that? Let me underline this. I took by force some Indians. As soon as I had come into the sea, I took by force some Indians. I captured, I enslaved some Indians from the first island in order that they might learn from us, unwilling students. And at the same time, tell us what they knew about affairs in these regions, even though they don't speak the same language. This succeeded admirably, for in a time we understood them. Really? And they us, both by gesture and signs and words. And here's a kicker, and they were of great service to us. Yeah, they told them how to find food, told them how to eat corn. They are coming now with me. They are coming now with me. Do you think they are coming voluntarily? Are they coming voluntarily? You answer that question. And have always believed that I have come from heaven, notwithstanding the long time they have been and still remain with us, after all, because I captured them and they're my slaves. And I'm planning to bring them back on the ship and show them to you. They were the first who told this wherever we went, calling to one another with a loud voice, "Come, come, you will see men from heaven." Whereupon both women and men, children and adults, young and old, laying aside the fear they had felt a little before, flocked eagerly to see us, a great crowd thronging about our steps, some bringing food and others drink with greatest love and incredible goodwill. Or maybe they were just afraid they were going to be killed. In each island are many boats made of solid wood, though narrow, yet in length and shape similar to our two bankers, but swifter in motion and managed by oars only. Some of them are large, some small, some of medium size, but most are larger than a two-banker rowed by 18 oars. With these they sail to all the islands, which are innumerable, engaging in traffic and commerce with each other. I saw some of these biremes, or boats, which carried 70 or 80 rowers. In all the islands, there is no difference in the appearance of the inhabitants, and none in their customs and language. So they all understand one another. How could he really know that if they haven't had time to learn the language and haven't had time to learn the culture? How do they know this? This is a circumstance most favorable for what I believe our most serene king especially desires. Here he goes, sucking up again. That is their conversion to the holy faith of Christ, for which indeed, so far as I could understand, they are very ready and prone. I have already told you how I sailed in a straight course along the island of Juana from west to east, 322 miles. From this voyage and the extent of my journeyings, I can say that this Juana is larger than England and Scotland together. For beyond the aforesaid 322 miles, in that portion which looks towards the west, there are two more provinces which I did not visit. One of them the Indians called Anan. Now look at this. And its inhabitants are born with tails. Come on now, with tails. So, you know, that right there lets us know that Christopher Columbus was capable of lying, because we know that there were never any humans with tails. But, you know, when you're thousands of miles away, you know, from your own country, you can invent things, and they have no way of checking, uh, no way of confirming whether this is true or not. So some people will believe it, some people won't. These provinces extend 180 miles, as I learned from the Indians, whom I am bringing with me, slaves, and who are well acquainted with all these islands. The distance around Hispania is greater than all Spain from Colonia to Fontarabia, as is readily proved because its fourth side, which I myself traversed in a straight course from west to east, stretches 540 miles. This island is to be coveted and not to be despised when acquired. In other words, we are going to acquire it. As I have already taken possession of all the others, as I have said, for our most invincible King Ferdinand, and the role over them is entirely committed to the said king, so in this one I have taken special possession of a certain large town in a most convenient spot, well suited for all profit and commerce, to which I've given the name of the Nativity of our Lord, Navidad. And there I ordered a fort to be built forthwith. Why do you need a fort except to protect your invaders, which ought to be finished now? In it I left as many men as seemed necessary, with all kinds of arms, weapons, and provisions sufficient for more than a year, also a caravel and men to build others, skilled not only in trade, but in others. I secured for them the goodwill and remarkable friendship of the king of the island, for these people are very affectionate and kind, so much so that the aforesaid king took a pride in my being called his brother. Although they should change their minds and wish to harm those who have remained in the fort, they cannot, because they are without arms. They go naked and are too timid. So that in truth, those who hold the aforesaid fort can lay waste the whole of that island. Isn't it great? We're going to be able to lay waste the whole of this island without any danger to themselves, provided they do not violate the rules and instructions I have given them. In all these islands, as I understand, every man is satisfied with only one wife, except the princes or kings who are permitted to have 20. The women appear to work more than the men, but I could not well understand whether they have private property or not. So actually, the idea of private property did not exist. For I saw that what everyone had was shared with the others, especially meals, provisions, and such things. I found among them no monsters, as very many expected, but men of great deference and kind. Nor are they black like Ethiopians, but they have long, straight hair. They do not dwell where the rays of sun have most power, though the sun's heat is very great there, as this region is 26 degrees distance from the equinoctial line. So the equinox is the line, the imagined line that goes around the center of the earth. From the summits of the mountains, there comes great cold, but the Indians mitigate it by being inured to the weather. So, you know, they're used to it, so the cold weather doesn't bother them. And by the help of very hot food, which they consume frequently and in immoderate quantities. I saw no monsters. Never mind the fact that I'm a monster myself. Okay, I saw no monsters. Neither did I hear accounts of any, except in an island called Charis, the second as one crosses over from Spain to India, which is inhabited by a certain race regarded by their neighbors as very ferocious. They eat human flesh and make use of several kinds of boats, which they cross over to all the Indian islands and plunder and carry off whatever they can. But they differ in no respect from the others, except in wearing their hair long, after the fashion of women. They make use of bows and arrows made of reeds, having pointed shafts fastened to the thicker portion, as we have before described. For this reason, they are considered to be ferocious, and the other Indians, consequently, are terribly afraid of them, but I consider them of no more account than the others. They have intercourse with certain women who dwell alone upon the island of Maturin, the first as one crosses from Spain to India. These women follow none of the usual occupations of their sex, but they use bows and arrows like those of their husbands, which I have described, and protect themselves with plates of copper, which is found in great abundance among them. I was informed that there's another island larger than the aforesaid Hispana, whose inhabitants have no hair, and that there's a greater abundance of gold in it than in any of the others. So, the natives might have told them that there's more gold, on down the line, so why don't you go on and go there? They might have just been trying to get rid of them. Some of the inhabitants of these islands and of the others I have seen, I am bringing over with me. I'm bringing over these specimens to prove what I have reported. Finally, to sum up in a few words, the chief results and advantages of our departure and speedy return, I make this promise to our most invincible sovereigns, the king and queen, that if I am supported by some little assistance from them, like, if you please just give me enough money to restock my boats and let enough money for me to assemble a crew, I promise I will give the king and queen as much gold as they need. And in addition, spices, cotton, and mastic, which is found only in keels, and much aloe wood, and as much heathen slaves. He's just going to take as many slaves as he wants, that their majesties may choose to demand, besides that rhubarb and drugs, which I think the men I left in the fort before alluded to have already discovered, or will do so. As I have delayed nowhere longer than the winds compelled me, except while I was providing for the construction of a fort in the city of Nativity and making all things safe. Although these matters are very wonderful and unheard of, they would have been so much more so if ships to a reasonable amount had been furnished to me. But what has been accomplished is great and wonderful, and not at all proportionate to my deserts, but to the sacred Christian faith and to the piety and religion of our sovereigns. In other words, the King and Queen of Spain, they are blessed. For what is the mind of man could not compass, the Spirit of God has granted to mortals. For God is wont and listen to his servants who love his precepts, even in impossibilities, as has happened to me in the present instance, who have accomplished what human strength has hitherto never attained. For if anyone has written or told anything about these islands, all have done so either obscurely or by guesswork, so that it has almost seemed to be fabulous. Therefore, let king and queen and princes and their most fortunate realms and all other Christian provinces, let us all return thanks to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who has bestowed so great a victory and reward upon us. victory and reward. Let there be processions and solemn sacrifices prepared. Let the churches be decked with festal boughs. Let Christ rejoice upon earth as he rejoices in heaven, as he foresees that so many souls of so many people heretofore lost are to be saved. And let us be glad not only for the exaltation of our faith, but also for the increase of temporal prosperity, in which not only Spain, but all Christendom is about to share. We're going to exploit these people like you wouldn't believe. All these things have been accomplished, so they have been briefly narrated. And Christopher Colon, this should be C-O-L-O-N in the Spanish. All right, let's pause here and get your feedback. What did you think about all this? So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people in the room. Everyone has muted their mics. So you need to unmute your mic so that I can hear you, please. I'm waiting for you to speak up. What are your reactions?
It's like the only jungle map. And
I'm sorry, what did you say? All right, so I'm getting no feedback from anyone, so I don't even know if you're really there. Although your names are there, your microphones are muted. You may have stepped out of the room to do something else. So this is a,
I'm sorry, Miss Better. It was one of those, like, my laptop died, and so I just rejoined.
oh, okay. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
And it's one of those. Jared's in here with me. That's why his name's still up there.
Oh, okay. All right.
And it's one of those we've been listening on here.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I'm relieved to hear that. Do you have any reaction to Christopher Columbus's first letter?
Really, both of us, we were talking about that. The only reaction we really had was about how he was just treating the Native Americans, really. Not really respecting them, what their religion, their choices, anything like that. More just based off of how he just even kidnapped them and treated them forcefully and didn't fully respect the people as they were.
That is such a great answer. I mean, you really hit the nail on the head, and you did so very articulately. So I appreciate that. Uh, and hopefully going over the reading here in this Zoom meeting will help you as you write your paper. And if you write as well as you speak, you're going to do fantastically well in this course. Does anyone else have a comment or opinion? Okay, that letter was pretty long. There's one other short letter that I'd like to go over if you are willing, because there will also be things in this letter that can help you. Yeah, thank you, Brandon. Thank you. I see your comment. They didn't see themselves as invaders, but thought they had found their new home. However, the Native Americans felt differently. Okay, that's a good comment. Let me ask you, and I'll. Oh. The second letter is very short, but that will conclude the Christopher Columbus letters. It's like a page and a half. Would you like to go over that in this Zoom meeting, or would you rather read it on your own?
Jerry and I both said that we would read it on our own.
Okay, all right. And Brandon is fine, because I'm perfectly happy to go over it. If anybody wants to stay, and I'll go over it. But if you don't want to stay and you think you can pick out, the things, the examples that they gave that really show the true nature of their minds, then I will leave that to do on your own, which I'm sure you're fully capable of doing it. I like going over it myself just to be sure that everyone got it. Here's what I will propose. If you would like to read it on your own, then you can just excuse yourself and leave the room. But if you would like for me to go over this page and a half and point out all the things that might be useful for you to use in your next writing assignment, then stay in the room and we'll go over that. So I'm giving opportunity for people to leave if they would like to, or to stay if they would like to. And while you're making that decision, I'm just going to go ahead and call up the screen and get the reading on the board. And let's see. Okay, this is the first letter. Okay, I'm going to stop the share so I can get the letter up. So we're almost there. And here we are. All right, sorry to have made you wait. And I say I have 2 people left, so that's great. John and Patrick, thank you for staying. This won't take long. This letter was written about the 4th voyage. And at this time, Christopher Columbus
No
was,
worries, Miss Better.
yes?
No, no worries. You said thank you for staying.
Uh-huh.
No worries. It's part of the class, right?
Right.
So of course I'm gonna stay.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Thank you. I see John is still here too. Yeah, it's better for you to stay because you're going to get things that will help you a lot with your paper. So I appreciate the fact that you stayed. This letter is just this long. So at this time, Christopher Columbus was in a very bad way with the king and queen of Spain. They no longer trusted him. They believed that he was just lying to them and taking money from them for his own. They had heard that he had contracted with another sovereignty, I believe Portugal. And so they were afraid that all the things that he was collecting was going to go to them, even though they had financed it originally. So they were mad at him. And so in this letter, he has already been cast out and he's begging, to get back in. So here's this letter, Jamaica in 1503, which he had kind of been banished. So here's the letter. Of Española, Paria, and other lands, I never think without weeping. I believe that their example would have been to the profit of others. On the contrary, they are in a languid state, although they are not dead. The infirmity is incurable or very extensive. Let him who brought them to this state come now with the remedy, if he can or if he knows it. In destruction, everyone is an adept. It is always the custom to give thanks and promotion to him who imperiled his person. So he's saying, even though you've cast me out, even though I'm no longer in your good favor, I still give thanks to you. It is not just that he who has been so hostile to this undertaking should enjoy his fruits, or that his children should. Those who left the Indies, flying from toils and speaking evil of the matter and of me, have returned with official employment. So it has now been ordained in the case of Veragua. It is an example without profit for the business and for the justice in the world. So he's telling the king and queen, you've made a bad mistake. You believed them and you didn't believe me. The fear of this, with other sufficient reasons which I saw clearly, led me to pray your highnesses before I went to discover these lands and tierra firma, that you would leave them to me to govern in your royal name. It pleased you. It was a privilege and agreement, and under seal and oath, you promised that I could be the leader of the settlements. And you granted me the title of Viceroy and Admiral and Governor, General of all. And you fixed the boundary 100 leagues beyond the Azores and Cape Verde Islands by a line passing from pole to pole. And you gave me wide power over this and over all that I might further discover. This document states this very fully. So in other words, he's saying we had a contract, we had a deal, and you have broken that contract. The most other important matter which calls aloud for redress remains inexplicable to this moment. 7 years I was at your royal court, where all to whom this undertaking was mentioned unanimously declared it to be a delusion. Now all, down to the very tailors, seek permission to make discoveries. It can believe that they go forth to plunder. I didn't plunder, but they are going to go forth and plunder. And it is granted to them to do so. So they greatly prejudice my honor and do very great damage to the enterprise. It is well to give to God that which is his due, and to Caesar that which belongs to him, and to me that which belongs to me. This is a just sentiment and based on justice. The lands which here obey your highnesses are more extensive and richer than all other Christian lands. After that, I, by the divine will, have placed them under your royal and exalted lordship, and was on the point of securing a very great revenue suddenly, while I was waiting for ships that I might come to your presence, to your high presence with victory and with great news of gold, being very secure and joyful. I was made a prisoner, and with my 2 brothers was thrown into a ship laden with fetters. In other words, he was put in chains, he was fettered, he was stripped to the skin, very ill treated, and without being tried or condemned. Who will believe that a poor foreigner could in such a place rise against your highnesses? So, you know, remember that Christopher Columbus was not a Spaniard, but he was working for Spain. You know, who would believe that a poor foreigner could in such a place rise against your highnesses without cause and without the support of some other prince, and being alone among vassals and natural subjects, and having all my children at your royal court? I came to serve at the age of 28 years, and now I have not a hair on my body that is not gray, and my body is infirm. In other words, I sacrificed my life for you. And whatever remained to me from those years of service has been spent and taken away from me and sold, and from my brothers down to my very coat, without my being heard or seen, to my great dishonor. It must be believed that this was not done by your royal command. The restitution of my honor, in other words, give me back my honor, the reparation of my losses, and the punishment of him who did this will spread abroad the fame of your royal nobility. The same punishment is due to him who robbed me of the pearls, and to him who infringed my rights as admiral. Very great will be your merit. Fame without parallel will be yours if you do this, and there will remain in Spain a glorious memory of your highnesses as grateful and just princes. So you shouldn't have believed that other guy. You should believe me. But now you should believe me, and you should punish that other guy. And that's going to make you look so great. The pure devotion which I have ever borne to the service of your highnesses, and the unmerited wrong that I have suffered, will not permit me to remain silent, although I would fain do so. So fain means here, it means I would prefer, you know, to do so. I would prefer to remain silent, but I can't. Fain carries with it the meaning of, you know, being forced not to. Now, heaven have mercy upon me, and may the earth weep for me. Of worldly goods, I have not even a blanca, a coin, for an offering in spiritual things. Here in the Indies, I have become careless of the prescribed forms of religion. Alone in my trouble, sick, in daily expectation of death, and encompassed about by a million savages full of cruelty and our foes, and so separated from the blessed sacraments of Holy Church. You know, he's saying it's your fault, you know, that I'm being drawn away from the Christian religion. My soul will be forgotten if it here leaves my body. Weep for me, whoever has charity, truth, and justice. I did not sail upon this voyage to gain honor or wealth. This is certain, for already all hope of that was dead. I came to your highnesses with true devotion and ready zeal, and I do not lie. I humbly pray your highnesses that if it please God to bring me forth from this place, that you will be pleased to permit me to go to Rome and to other places of pilgrimage so that I can practice my Christianity. May the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, preserve your life in high estate and grant you increase of prosperity, done in the Indies, in the island of Jamaica, on the 7th of July, in the year 1503. So this really quite a great contrast in this letter from the other letter. What is your reaction to this letter? Hello?
So are they talking about in the letter about how Christopher Columbus is angry that they trusted the Portuguese more than they trusted him when he had put in so much time and effort into gaining their trust and working with them?
Yes, exactly. That's right.
Okay, that makes sense. And then um Christopher Columbus understood what they were going to do the entire time, but they still did not listen to him.
Christopher,
Oh,
let's see.
where my card?
I'm not sure I understood that comment, Patrick. Could you run it by me again, Christopher?
Strawberries?
Yeah. He understood that.
He understood that um the Portuguese were going to take all of the goods the entire time. They're going to take all the wealth that was going to come.
Well, according to this letter, he has fallen out of favor, with the Spanish royalty because they believe that he was bargaining, um, with the other royalty, not their kingdom, but Portugal, that he was actually, working for Portugal instead of them, which apparently someone had planted that idea, in the head of the Spanish king and queen, so that they no longer trusted him because he hadn't actually produced any results. He had written letters, but he hadn't actually, brought the gold to them. And so, he had been asking for more gold to go back, but then he was banished. And he's in Jamaica, and they don't trust him anymore. So in this letter, he's begging them to do the right thing and to accept him back into their graces and to bring him back, to Europe. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yes, it did.
But you can see how hurt he is, and he's sick, and he's trying to save his own reputation because before he'd been greatly hailed around the world as a great discoverer, but now he was persona non grata. John, did you have a reaction?
Oh, I didn't even know I was still in here. I thought I left a long time ago. I'm so sorry.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's
Well,
my
you know,
apologies.
that's that was really not necessary information. But anyway, I
No,
appreciate.
I had no questions about the
Okay,
readings today from this morning.
I appreciate your honesty. All right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Well, these two letters that we went over today, they're going to be a big part of your next major assignment. So I appreciate you being here, and that's really all that I have for today. Unless you have any final question or comment.
Mm, no, ma'am. I'm straight. Appreciate it.
Okay, John. And how about you, Patrick?
I think I'm good. I think I'm solid.
Okay. All right. Y'all have a great day.
Yes, ma'am. You as
I'll see
well.
you at the next class next
All right.
Thursday.
Thank you, Miss
All right.
Better.
Bye.